I have now gotten to the point where, and I don't like put them on my head just because with no hair, it creates this little indentation, and I walk around with that going on. So I'm starting to do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I did do my pants pocket a couple times, but then, after buying the cheapo 4-pack off Amazon, and when I sit down, they snap in half. I'm like,
there goes another
those
pair.
are gone.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, then you look up readers on your phone, and of course, then when you scroll on social, every other ad now is for readers, and they're typically like the $200 fancy ones. So I'm like, I'm not spending $200 on a pair of readers. Like, that's dumb.
Yep.
I treat them like I do my sunglasses. It's a very similar problem for me. So I just have decided to accept that I just have the cheap ones. But I've thought about having like my lenses replaced in my eyes so that, because my vision's not great. And I was like, then I found out it was going to cost me like $10,000 an eye. And I was like, I'll just buy some more.
Yeah.
Of these. It's fine.
I can buy a lot of readers for their $10,000.
I did have a buddy of mine's my optometrist, and he's like, just try it. He's like, if you don't like it, it's fine. But one contact in one eye, and he's like, the first day or two you're not going to like, but just plow through that and see how it goes. I don't know if I got 3 days into it, I was like, I can't do this.
No,
I feel like missing a step because my depth perception was all off. I was like, I'm not doing this.
They wanted to do that permanently with the lenses in my eyes, and I was like, can we try that with contacts first? And I can't do it. So that's the other. My husband's tried it. I've tried it. I'm sure it works for somebody, but I think I'm way too I don't know, sensory or something. I'm very and I spend a lot of time in front of the computer.
Right.
So I don't know.
I know someone who
me.
has done it, and they've gotten through it, and it's just like their normal thing. But like, I'll look at them, and they're constantly doing this.
Oh,
and they do this.
no.
I'm like, no,
Yeah.
No.
At least they're not doing this, like covering one eye.
That'd be
Like a
weird.
5-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing? He's like, I'm just looking.
I'm just seeing.
This is what I have to do.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Until
terrible.
then, see what you look forward to.
Yep. I'm ready for it.
One of these days when you actually hit
You'll
40
know.
or 50.
You'll know when it happens.
I feel like I'm going to be I'm going to hold out way too long before I just accept it.
It just becomes like you can't read.
I
mean, for a while you start to feel this thing, and then one day it gets so bad you just can't anymore.
Yeah.
You're done.
And you change the font on your phone.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And you think it's still not that bad until like when your kids looks at your phone, like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what?
Are you trying to read that from space? What are you trying to do?
Well, I do really love, I spend a lot of time in front of my computer, and I do really love big monitors.
Yep.
And so I do a lot of editing and things, and I have a PhD, so I do a lot of, reading, writing, whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
And now, people will come into my office, and I'll have font size 120 on the screen. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, just not wearing my readers. And then when I have to take my small computer with me for travel, I'm like,
oh boy.
Right.
Yeah. So I just blow it up really big on a big screen.
Right.
And
sounds familiar.
it's like a billboard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What size is your monitor? Billboard size?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly.
I have one in every office. I have 3 offices, and I have one in every office. And I just like, how big can I make it?
Well, it is what it is. We're still here to talk about it. That's the main thing.
That's the important part.
Amen.
Right. Yeah. Is this thing on? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Summits Podcast. Thank all of you for joining us wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're joining us on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending time with us. All right, today we have a special guest, Miss Robyn Spoon. Robyn, welcome to the Summits Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Why don't you do a basic little introduction for yourself?
Oh my goodness, that's like generic. A generic introduction for myself. Well, I'm Robyn Spoon. I am a wife. I'm a mom to 3. I guess I run a nonprofit. I'm a CEO of Elevate Childhood Cancer Research and Advocacy. I think I'm involved in a lot of things, so I'm sitting here thinking, what are all the different ways in which I can share who I am? But that's me in kind of a nutshell.
Yeah. Born and raised in Indiana?
Born in Iowa.
Iowa.
Okay.
Hawkeyes. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Are you a Hawkeye or a Cyclone?
None of these
Neither.
things. No. I was there for 3 whole years.
Okay.
And then raised in Indiana, left briefly to go to North Carolina, and then came back.
What part of Indiana?
Columbus.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I'm an IU grad.
Okay.
For my first degree was from
Okay.
Indiana. Is that good or bad around
That's fine.
here?
We're a little divided. It's fine.
That's okay. My nephew
Yeah.
graduated from Purdue. So.
Purdue.
Poor kid. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm
My
kidding.
brother went to IU. We don't talk much anymore. So it's fine.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So
It's mostly BS.
prior to all of this, my life with cancer, with my son, I was working as an education consultant,
Okay.
and so working with families and kids in the academic, college and career attainment. Kind of focusing on helping kids thrive as they transition into adulthood, helping with college applications and things. And so I've become very, very, very college neutral, which is
Okay.
why I'm not
That's
getting
fair.
into the fray.
Yeah. College neutral in terms of determining like which one, or school versus school, but really more of trying to figure out what's the best fit for
Exactly.
John or Jane Doe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So I have, one out of college now, one in college, and one's a senior in high school. All very different. What are some of the key, key indicators? If that's the right word.
Okay.
For kids that when you're kind of helping them, guide them, what were some of the key things you were really looking for to determine like
What is good
How to
fit?
match
Yeah.
them and
How to help them. There are so many different things, but I would say that as I continued on I went back to get a PhD when I was in my 40s.
Okay.
I'm sort of like a serial degree obtainer. My husband has told me I'm done. I became Dr. Spoon, and it was like, please stop.
Yeah.
And so I think I started really looking at what does it mean to thrive as a young person.
right.
And that means a lot of things. So being able to have good discernment, being able to have good social, like satisfying social, like relationships, being able to find a career that you enjoy 80% of the time. I always tell young people, I'm like, I have to take the trash out. I own a small business. I don't necessarily enjoy that.
Wait,
but
only 80%, but I want 100%.
Yeah, 100% is satisfying.
We're realistic here, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but like with young people, we start looking at their values and characteristics,
Yeah.
their kind of major that they're looking for, and the kind of experience they want to have on campus. There's, is religion important? What kind of political? That's become a really big issue. We're not going to talk about that here
Yeah.
too long, but just is it a place where people feel safe? Those kinds of things. But
Right.
I've done that for a lot of years, almost 2 decades.
Yeah. I know part of the conversation, like, do I want a small school? Do I want a big school? And then I know, and it's been a few years since I went to IU, but one of the concerns going into a big university like that was like, is it too big? Am I going to get lost? Am I going to get swallowed up? And what I found, and my daughter, who's a senior at IU now, has found, and I think it's pretty true for really anywhere, big or small school, but get involved in a few things, and it shrinks it down immensely.
Right.
And
I
it all
always-
comes back to networking, right?
It really does. And, kids have been really involved in sports. Then they need to find a way to be physically active if they're not going to be on the
Right.
team anymore, make the big school small. But it's kind of funny because this maybe brings us back to how we ended up in the cancer world. And that is that my oldest daughter followed in my husband and my footsteps and went off to the big Indiana University. And then our middle son, Justin, who ultimately was diagnosed with rhabdomyosarcoma, went to a really tiny school called Asbury down in Kentucky, and it was half the size of his high school. And so it was really interesting. I'll never forget taking him to campus. He was a really talented distance runner.
Okay.
And, he'd had a couple of little injuries that affected some of his recruiting, but he'd been getting recruited to run D1, and he was visiting all these schools and all these programs. And then he just was like, I don't want my whole life to be about this. And he goes, I'm not going to become a professional runner, but I want running to be part of what I'm doing. And so I had this little game I used to have kids, the teenagers that I work with play. I'd give them all these cards, and now I use a spreadsheet, not as exciting. And he would sit and say, I want this, I don't want this, and whatever. And he pulls all the cards out, and he was like, I want to go someplace where I can grow in my faith and I want to go someplace literally in the middle of a cornfield somewhere so that I don't get distracted, and I want to be somewhere where I can really be part of the community. And so he visited a lot of tiny Christian schools surrounded by, cornfields, and we went down to Asbury, which is surrounded by beautiful horse country, and I was like, will this work? And I'll never forget, he ran with the team one day, and he was coming back over this hill and coming down, and I just saw this look of complete satisfaction on his face. And nobody in his school had ever run as fast as he had. So the coach was like, he's not really going to come here. And the day that Justin called and said, I'm gonna come to Asbury, it was sort of like Christmas morning for this coach.
Right, yeah. He's like, wait, really?
And it was really cute. He was like, you're really going to come here? He was like, yeah. And he ended up really helping to build their running program. And
awesome.
It was really great. And do all the things he wanted to do.
Yeah,
so.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
So my youngest, I mentioned senior in high school, wants to play softball in college. So we're going through that whole same process.
It's hard.
And a few of the things that you just mentioned really resonated because she's struggling with some of that right now. She's not a D1 prospect, and it's probably good because she likes to be involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And what we're finding, if she were, like, you're going to live, eat, breathe softball, and that's pretty much it. And she's not sure what she wants to major in, but nursing is one of the options. And we've had a couple, just in conversations, a couple D1 coaches say, yeah, you're not going to major in nursing.
No.
And as a parent, I'm sitting there like, wait, what? Did you just tell this kid?
It's
but I
crazy.
get it.
Yeah, I do. Yet at the same time, it's really hard for me. I mean, I've worked
Right.
with a lot of high achieving. My area of focus in my PhD was in gifted development. And so I've worked with some very high achieving athletes and academics and things like that. And yeah, it's really tough. And so it was nice. It was nice that Justin found his place.
Yeah.
So
I agree. The other thing, and I've not said this to any of them, but I'm sitting there as a parent sitting like, none of these girls are going to make a living playing softball.
Right.
So why are we not trying to foster the rest of, building them as a person and their education? So we're obviously looking at smaller schools, which are a better fit. And now it's trying to figure out, like, she's been to a couple schools like your son did that literally, and she doesn't go to a very big high school, are like the size of her high school, like 1,000 students.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, having gone to IU, I'm like, oh my God, that's like tiny. Like I couldn't do it, but we're different people. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how that plays out, and I guess we'll see what happens. But
I went to
her process the whole thing.
A small high school, and that was one of the big things I went to when toured Rose Holman as one of the options, and got there and was like, this is way too small. I can't do it. And then went to Purdue and walked into one of the large classrooms, and there was 1,000 people in it. And I was like, this is perfect. No one will know me. This is amazing. I'm going here. So it's funny how those kind of things just stand out. I visibly, remember walking into Rose and the classroom being 12 people, and then going into Purdue and being 1,200. It's like, this is.
And to each their own. Because there might be some people freak out walking into a big classroom like that. But, whatever floats your boat, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good segue. You mentioned your son, Robyn. This is really kind of the meat of the podcast here, and kind of the conversation that you and I have started to have. What is your cancer story?
Yeah. So, I mean, pediatric cancer is really our story, and it's really weird because it happened when my son was 21.
Okay.
So we have 3 kids. Katie, who's now 28, and at the time would have been, what was this, 5 years ago, was 23 years old. Justin was 21, and our youngest, Ryan, was 18 years old. And my husband and I had just become empty nesters. COVID had been raging, and I remember at the beginning of COVID thinking to myself, thank God no one in our home has a serious health condition. And our children were so incredibly healthy. And I was like, thank God we don't have to worry about that. No. And then, in the fall of 2020, the kids went back to school. Our youngest started at IU. Justin went back for a senior year at Asbury, where he was working very, very, very hard to hit an All-American status. He had his last cross-country season, and it was his 3rd bid for nationals. Oh, cool. And then Katie was heading to Colorado to start her own PhD. She had left California from another job and was headed there. And my husband and I were empty nesters, and we're kind of goofy. And so after we dropped our son Ryan off at school, we took a couple selfies, and we were like, woohoo, you know, look at us. And we went out to lunch and had a great time and whatever. And it was still tough because, you know, there was a lot of mask wearing and, you know, all this stuff. And Justin started complaining about having some kind of pain in his face. And he thought it was a sinus infection, saw a campus doctor. They gave him antibiotics. And then I actually, every Sunday, he and I used to get on the phone together and do like a Zoom call. He was applying for PhD programs to become a school psychologist. Okay. He wanted to work with kids on the autism spectrum. And so I was working with him on those applications because that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, right.
And I looked and I went, dude, you have a lump in a place on your face that shouldn't belong. Like, there's nothing there. It's next to his nostril. And I was like, that's not a sinus infection. And I had a student a couple of years prior that had developed osteosarcoma in a funny spot. Okay. And I learned that painless, weird bumps in funny places on young people, really anybody, are not okay. And he could not get into a doctor. I was working with a family at the time. Both mom and dad were doctors. And I said, what would you do? And they were like, find a clinic that has access to a CT and make sure they do it. And they did. And then that weekend, we didn't have the results. We went to the Greater Louisville, whatever, Classic, and we watched him absolutely destroy the competition. He won this national race by over 30 seconds. And if you know, in cross country, literally, he came into the chute and finished before anybody else even entered that final chute. And he was stronger, healthier, in a better place in his life than he'd ever been. And after he ran, he said, my nose is burning, like it's really dry out here. And within a couple weeks, we were sitting in a clinic in Lexington under COVID. Parents are not allowed to go in. He was over 18. And we find ourselves in this crazy hospital setting where they told us we could go in. Everybody else was being told. I mean, they had security at the door. Only the patient, only the patient. And then we walk up to the door and our names, and they were like, oh, we were told you can come. And then I was like, my kid has cancer. And he was, we heard the word rhabdomyosarcoma that day for the first time. And I couldn't pronounce it for 5 days, which was a really big struggle for me because I was getting a PhD. I can say some really big words. And I was literally handed a WebMD sheet from this doctor. And I wanted to say this guy is crazy, but on the wall in this office was a crooked Harvard med school diploma. His crooked Harvard med school diploma. And I was like, we don't have a crazy guy.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning for us. And he handed us a phone and said, I've got a consultant on the other line. It's a pediatric oncologist. It's my backdoor neighbor. And I don't know anything about this disease here. And that's how our story began.
Wow.
Okay, so two things are going through my mind. One is, okay, that seems like a strange occurrence by him, but at the same time, then the other side is, oh, well, he's taken the initiative to get you connected with someone who's better fit to address this.
Or first.
How did that conversation go? And then, like, what were the next steps?
I barely remember the conversation. Yeah. I was on the phone with a doctor from a regional hospital center, and I'm thinking there is no way. I saw that the occurrence of his cancer is about 500 a year, and I work in research where I research small populations of people, and I said, oh my gosh, there's probably no funding for this. The research is probably not great. We need somebody who knows what they're doing. And so fortunately for us, we have a lot of friends that are connected into the medical field. And we picked up picked up the phone, called a few people. Yep. And a friend of mine who's a pediatrician who was trained at Vanderbilt, I emailed her literally at 4:00 in the morning one morning. And by about 11 that morning, within a couple days, I was on the phone with the head of the sarcoma division at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, which is where he was treated.
Okay. Yeah. Cincinnati Children's have a little familiarity with them. Riley, obviously well known here in Indy. had a few patients that they have referenced to Cincinnati. In particular, without going into specifics, it was more of a specialized type case, and that seemed to be the right fit for them. What was your guys' experience at Cincinnati Children's?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I mean, we're big fans of Riley. We're here in Indiana, and you know, our nonprofit partners quite a bit, and actually with Riley and especially Herman B. Wells. And Justin did donate both of his tumors back into Indiana. This is where they're being researched, so he's a bit of an honorary Riley kid that way.
Yeah.
But he was over the age of 19 at the time, and we needed a high volume pediatric sarcoma center, and that's where we went. We had a phenomenal experience. I mean, it was crazy, but it was phenomenal. He was treated there, University of Cincinnati Medical Center, and also Seattle Children's Hospital.
Okay. If you could, because this is a fairly rare cancer, can you describe like what it is,
Sure.
and give us just some background?
Yeah, so I always tell people rhabdomyosarcoma. I knew I was in business when I could say rhabdomyosarcoma. So rhabdo references muscle, and then sarcoma is a type of cancer. Rhabdomyosarcoma is a type of cancer that arises in any kind of connective tissue, muscle tissue.
Okay.
So it actually oddly can show up in almost any place in your body because we have connective tissue everywhere. Very common in the head, face, neck. Very common in the hands and feet. It can show up in reproductive organs and really anywhere that you have connective tissue, but those are the most common locations.
Okay.
Usually shows up painless bump somewhere, but not always.
Okay.
Typically affect the younger population, or has this been seen pretty much throughout?
They say that it's more common in children, which is why it's been dubbed more of a pediatric cancer.
Okay.
However, now that we're doing all this genomic analysis on adult cancers, we're seeing more and more and more cases in adults. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing diagnoses in adults, not because we're necessarily having more cases of it, but because I think they're more appropriately diagnosing it. Like they might have before diagnosed it as some kind of sarcoma or carcinoma or something like that, and now we're getting a more accurate diagnosis. So we see quite a bit of it in adults.
Any guesses as to causes, or
they don't know. I mean, this is one of those research areas that's when people say, why research? Research saves lives. Well, we don't know a lot about this. We do know that in probably about 5% of cases, there's a known genetic predisposition.
Okay.
However, I say known very cautiously here because there's still a lot we don't know about genetic predisposition. Justin had no known genetic predisposition for sarcoma, and so we really don't know.
Yeah.
Couple questions come to mind. In this particular instance, like pediatric cancer in general is very well underfunded.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that if this is even a rare form of pediatric cancer, it is incredibly underfunded. In just the 5 years that you've been in this world, what have you seen any changes? Is that still a massive struggle? And
it's worse today than it was a year ago.
Okay.
You know, at the national level, pediatric cancer on average is funded at about 4%, and that changes. People always tout this 4%. They'll even say more than 4. Our kids deserve more than 4. However, that number ranges between about 3.5% and 7% of the federal budget, depending on any given year. But then when you think about it, it's pretty much overlooked by the major pharmaceutical companies, and so it's probably only getting about, I mean, this is totally anecdotal. I'd put it at like 0.025% of the overall effort into any kind of cancer research. And we have to remember, every type of childhood cancer is technically considered rare, but that's against the whole population. So if you consider that like about 15% of all people are kids.
Yeah.
Well, anything they have is going to be rare against anything an adult has. But cancer is the number one cause of death in children by disease in this country. And we look at there's a lot of data out there. I think that when we started all of this, somehow the different marketing and messaging that I had seen out in the world made me believe The children were going in the hospital getting treated. They'd get bald, maybe they get a little sick, and they generally just were thriving with cancer. And then I found out very quickly that that is not the case at all. The average age of a drug that our children are treated with for cancer is 40 or 50 years old. I mean, the backbone of my son's chemotherapy was FDA approved in 1959, which is the year Alaska became a state. The newest one was the year the Berlin Wall came down. I remember that day. That was 1986. I was, 14 years old. Now everybody knows how old I am. and I think, is that insane? That is insane.
Yeah.
And so that's been really unfortunate. And of course, this last year, it's been a complicated year, and about 40% of the NIH funding was cut, and then there's been a delay in funding coming out. I am actively involved in a lot of efforts to work on those things, and it's just, it's been a tough year. We're getting a lot of requests from scientists to sit down and meet with us to find out how we can help in some way with what they're doing.
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to this, and I'm probably not going to say this right, but I think you kind of will know where I'm coming from. With the different genetic testing, the immunotherapies, all the stuff that's happening today, do you think it will help spur some better advancements on the ped side? Because, I mean, I'm not shocked to hear you say some of the medicines that are still being used there that are 40 years old, and they may work fairly well, but at the same time, like from my experience 25 years ago, the cocktail of choice was probably 30 or 20 years old at that point in time. Did it work? Yes, I'm still here, but it's a carpet bombing.
It is a carpet bombing.
It's taking out everything.
Yeah, we need guided missiles.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really, really tough. So the nonprofit that we have founded, Elevate, our mission is making sure that children, well, and really adolescents and young adults, have precision medicine on day one.
Yeah.
Do I believe that the efforts that are happening in the adult cancer world around genetic predisposition testing and around things like sequencing tumors, we hear this language. I mean, anybody who's been around cancer kind of starts hearing like sequence the tumor and learn about the tumor. Those things are helpful. But again, the consumer essentially has to be pretty savvy about it. And then there'd have to be a match. There'd have to be something that actually matches that. And then it would have to be FDA approved for the child to take it. And so it's a long road on average between the time that a drug is approved for adults and if it ever gets into a child is 6.5 years.
Wow.
So same disease. Or a disease that has like a marker, like a tumor marker. You know, there could be a specific tumor marker like ALK or, there's these different proteins that these cancer drugs treat. There could be a marker in an adult cancer that's also in a pediatric cancer. And even if they have that same marker, on average, if it ever happens, is about 6.5 years.
Wow.
It's a really tough setting for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's not just a dosing thing. It's
No.
and I'm not educated enough to even speak on it, but
it's a lot of things. I mean, part of it is some people think, I hear people say, we need kid-sized drugs for kids. And I'm like, yeah, guess what? Kids' metabolism is a lot faster than adults. Some of them can actually take much higher doses.
Yeah.
oh, okay. Here I'm taking the opposite.
Yeah.
But sometimes not.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Right. So it is effortful. It takes effort. We have to decide that we are going to work on this.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you guys, if I say this incorrectly, correct me, donated portions of the tumor. I know Todd Trent did the same. I'm sure several others have done that. What benefits, this is probably a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just for the general public's knowledge. What benefits are coming from those donations at this point?
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And actually, you mentioned Tyler Trent, and I mean, I had followed his story before Justin ever had cancer, and how we ended up donating Justin's tumor back to Herman B. Wells was because of an article that Kelly had written for the Indianapolis Star. Kelly Trent had written, and it was like Justin was going to have surgery on a Tuesday. It was right after Easter weekend in 2021. And Justin was knowledgeable enough about research that he wanted his tumor to go somewhere where they would develop cell lines and that they would actively work on it. He had a very rare mutation called FUS-TFCP2, that there are no cell lines. There's very little information out there about it. And it's never been survivable. And so we had a very big climb ahead of us, and we read this article. It was Good Friday, and I had been praying and praying and praying, help us find some place that can take these tumors, because even though Cincinnati was doing great work, they didn't have anybody who could do that at the time. And so I read this article that Kelly had written on Good Friday, and then at the end there was a link to the research that had recently come out about Tyler's tumors, and it had the name of the scientist, and I emailed her on a Saturday morning, and I put in the subject line, 22-year-old refractory, which just means it's not responding to treatment, tumor available in Cincinnati on Tuesday, do you want it? And 5 minutes later, I got a phone call, and that began what is now just an amazing relationship we have with the lab, and they're doing great things. So people are like, does it matter? Well, you know, there's all this talk about using AI to solve all of the world's problems right now. But the problem is AI needs data.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
It
like
needs that tumor to...
You got to have data. So we can't just, it's not, otherwise AI is like subject to hallucination.
Very much so.
We have to be really careful. And so what we did was they have the tumor 1, and then they have tumor 2, which was after, they took the first tumor out. He went through treatment. He was no evidence of disease for a year. He was on a very specific drug that we found. And then it came back, and they took it out again. IU Riley has both tumors, so that's like 2 points in time, and they can see what happened after, and they're very different.
Interesting.
And so they're doing amazing research on it. And Karen Pollock, Dr. Karen Pollock, who we love.
She's
I know
awesome.
you guys, so I spent a lot of time with her. She's the keeper of the tumors, and has just been doing amazing work, training new scientists, which is really, really important, doing great work. I found out from her the other day. Now, most of the time when you donate these kinds of things, it's anonymous. So what I'm getting ready to say, the fact that I know all of this is because we have this relationship, and we've given her full permission to use Justin's name, tell his story, because we think that helps. But I want people to know that if they do donate these kinds of things to science, their life doesn't have to become as public as ours has with this. And so I say that because I'm using Karen's name, and she's going to be like, oh my gosh, you need to tell them that usually I don't tell people all this stuff. But if Justin's cell lines are actually in Europe right now, and they're doing some specialized testing on it, and they're trying to figure out the exact moment that the cells overcome the treatment that he was on, so they can figure out how it's behaving. And that way we know what we can treat it with next. Karen is amazing. The work being done at Herman B. Wells and IU School of Medicine and all of the above it's phenomenal.
Well, kudos to you guys for making that donation.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Justin's foresight and that process is awesome. All right, so you guys, through tragic loss, have decided to turn that emotion into action. Incredibly commendable. And I think there's a lot of people out there, as we've seen, businesses are started every day and fail every day. Nonprofits are started every day and fail every day. A lot of people go through a certain situation and have this spark to do something, and then a certain percentage of them actually do something, and a certain percentage actually take it and continue on with it. I guess I'll start with the quote-unquote dumb question. What really triggered you guys to say, hey, we want to actually do something, and then kind of tell us about that story and where you guys are at today?
Well, within a couple of weeks of his diagnosis, we started looking for nonprofits that were doing the work that we knew we needed somebody to be doing for us. My brother, Chris Osborne, is our board chair. We didn't start the nonprofit until past that point, but just in reference. He has a master's degree in nonprofit management. And I had served in education advocacy organizations on boards my whole career, whether it was at the local level for the school foundation or the Indiana Association for the Gifted, or I worked on an international school board. That really trained me because the school was in Haiti and our board was in the United States. We had children in a building. COVID hit. I mean, I learned an enormous amount of stuff from that experience. And so we knew the nonprofit space was going to be a place we could get some help. And we started looking around and we found out that specifically for rhabdomyosarcoma, there were just really a lot of very small nonprofits out there, mainly started by families who were bereaved. And they were all doing little bits of good work. And I just, continued to look for that group that was like a convener, a collaborator. Part of the research and the work I've done has been in multi-stakeholder work. Like, you've got this messy, terrible problem you have to solve, and you got to put a team together, and everybody's got a different skill set. You got to pull them into a room together and solve it. It is the messiest group project on the planet. 10
smaller independent groups working on it, but they're not talking, and they're having the same issues or whatever. Yeah,
but it's hard. It's really, really hard to do effectively. And I started to realize, man, childhood cancer is one of the messiest problems. And it needs lots of stakeholders. And so I found a little place where I think my expertise kind of existed. So I actually started serving on other groups. Right out of the bat, I was invited into this thing, a group that was trying to come together called the Rhabdomyosarcoma Coalition. They tried to get started in 2021, and I was invited into those meetings and met some of these amazing people who'd been fighting for my kid's life long before my kid ever was diagnosed. I think that's really compelling when you realize they have literally, some of these families have been fighting for us for 10 years or 20 years before we ever had a diagnosis. And I'm like, these are rock stars that have been doing this. And I wanted to be a part of it. And it took a while for everything to come together. But ultimately, after Justin passed away in March of 2023, I was involved in a couple of other nonprofits, and I still wasn't finding that one that really wanted to handle this multi-stakeholder problem that I saw. And so we decided to go for it. And we also believe that every cancer type needs a voice. Different kinds of breast cancer, prostate cancer, leukemia, the different blood cancers, they all need a voice. But then at some point, some of those issues rise up and there's like an umbrella of commonality. And we wanted to be able to do both of those things and give voice to rhabdomyosarcoma. And then we also focus on a pediatric cancer called Wilms tumor, which is a renal cancer.
You just hit the nail on the head for me in that I get the question like, why, when you started the Heroes Foundation, like, why didn't you just focus on the blood cancer that you had? I go, because that'd have been too easy. They're like, what do you mean? I go, well, like, my mom's a breast cancer survivor. I had a fraternity brother a couple years later who had a child with brain cancer. Like, I just believe in hate cancer in general, like all cancers. I don't care if it's the one I had, or now I have prostate cancer, or we all know, we probably all rattled off 10 people we know that have 10 different types of cancers. Like, it all sucks.
It's evil.
I want it all gone. And yes, I agree. As the business person, what's inside of me says, well, you can't be everything to everyone. I go, I get it, but we're gonna try anyway.
Well, we've done a little. I know I wear people out sometimes. I stay very. I've been told.
It's okay.
Like, how do you keep up with all this stuff? I'm like, well, it's just the way my brain works. So we do kind of look at rhabdomyosarcoma and Wilms tumor because we felt like neither one of them had a voice.
Sure.
And then we're like, and then if there are other cancers like this that don't have great advocacy voice, we will create a work group around that. So we bring in advocates that we feel like they're patients, they're parents that have kind of been screaming in a tunnel for a while. Listen to me. That don't have a strong voice for the specific kind of cancer, because there are some nuances, but then at some point we listen to all those concerns and we say, okay, what can we do on the bigger picture? So we stay pretty focused. Like, to your point, we can't be everything to everybody. I am wholeheartedly driven to bring precision medicine to children on day one. But there's a lot of things that need to happen to make that happen. So we focus on trying to provide education to families to improve their ability to make decisions at these incredibly crucial and difficult and messy moments.
Yeah.
Childhood cancer across the board is not one of those where you walk in and they go, okay, this is your protocol, boom. And we know that very rarely is that what happens. It's like, well, we're going to give you what we think is probably the best possible option. Yeah, this is kind of part of a trial right now. And then at some point, we may hit a T in the road and we may have to make some decisions about what's going on. And that's what our life was like. It was like a total roller coaster for 2.5 years of just chasing after one tough decision after another. So we want to give families that option. So like, for example, we did a webinar on how to secure a second opinion. And then on the other side of it, while we're helping families make decisions in these moments, that to me is the Band-Aid. But the prize for me is precision medicine on day one.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I'm happy that our paths have crossed. I mean, you've heard me say this a bazillion times. Indiana, it's 2 ways back to Kevin Bacon, right?
Yep.
And
Right.
so I'm glad whoever it was that made the connection. We've already made an earlier connection as we were talking before we started the podcast. I'm glad we've connected. I'm glad we can partner up in any way that we can. I want to learn more about that, what you just that statement you just said, because it's starting to happen. We're not there yet, but it's moving in the right direction.
It is.
How the bleep do we make it happen faster? And I know.
Oh my gosh, I love this right now.
If I ask certain people at certain institutions, they'll say, well, if you make a $47 million contract, I go, well, I don't have $47 million, but.
I love the fact that you said, how do we make it happen faster? Because right now, just even here in Indiana, 75 basketball teams worth of children will be diagnosed with cancer in the state of Indiana this year.
I like the way you put that. I mean, in a way.
Yeah.
I like the illustration.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's probably more, just the way that we gather data is kind of tough, but like just boom.
Yep.
And we know that 40% of those families are going to experience intense financial hardship because of the kind of experience kids have when they're going through treatment. It is brutal out there. And so every single day I get up and I'm like, we have to work faster. We have to work faster. And how do we make it go faster? So when I talk to scientists, I'm like, okay, what's significant? Not just scientists. We talk to scientists. We talk to policymakers, the FDA. I had the opportunity to testify at the FDA last year about some of these issues as well, and work with a lot of different kinds of teams and collaborate across a lot of spaces. In pediatric cancer, most of innovation's happening in academia, in our universities. But in pharma, if they decide they're going to go all in on a project and a disease, they're going to put all their resources together. And even then it's hard for them to get anything over the finish line. So when we think about the fact that so much of this is happening in all these little silos for kids, we have to find a way to make it easier for them to come together. And it's not just the scientists, it's people with experience in getting drugs through FDA clinical trials, it's manufacturing. It turns out Indiana has all these resources right here. So we're pretty excited. We're pretty excited about that. But I think, I don't want to talk in circles, but I do want to go back. A lot of people look at maybe what I'm doing and they're like, how do you even do that? I want to make a difference or whatever. I think that not everybody should start a nonprofit if they want to do a project. Some people should, some people shouldn't. You made the comment that small businesses fail every day. Nonprofits are businesses that don't pay certain kinds of taxes.
Right. 100%.
It's a lot of work.
Yep.
You got to have a board. In fact, I think it's worse because you can't just be like unilateral. You've got like, you've got to speak to. I have a board that I am, beholden to. They listen to me, but also I got to listen to them.
Yeah. Yep.
It's different than the small business I own, where I'm like, if I want to will it into being, I just go boom. I don't have somebody stand around going, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But I would say that if somebody is out there and they want to make a difference and there's a project they want to do, find a nonprofit first. Make sure that they're not willing to maybe do something in the name of your child. If that's what a lot of people want legacy. So it's like, find somebody who's doing something, partner with them. do a project first. Maybe work with your local community foundation. If you want to raise money for one fund, or you want to whatever, unless you start trying to do something where you're trying to do 3, 4, 5 different projects or whatever it might be, really, there's a lot of ways to do it without the headache. Not to be discouraging.
Right. No, you're right, though.
But anyway, that's just my kind of takeaway. You just saw me walk in a circle.
No, that's okay. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I get that question still. Like, you're 26 years in. Why are you still doing it? It's like, I still have the passion. Like,
right.
There are some things that I'm happy to like not do anymore. But at the same time, at the end of the day, I constantly will see emails or texts or whatever of someone newly diagnosed, and that fire inside of me just, he knows. It ranges. I get ticked. And that has not wavered. And that's why I still put up with all the stuff that
goes along with it. Yep.
Running a nonprofit.
Yeah, yes, because it is a lot of work. But I think that's a good, valid point. So you had asked a little bit about like how to speed it up. That is exactly what we're trying to do. And we're doing it, like some people are like, okay, raise the money, give the money. We will give money at Elevate if there's a project that we can unstick. Okay. We see a sticking point that nobody else is going to come in and just kind of turn that dial on. And so we're looking for those places where it's hard to unstick. And this is like the least exciting stuff. Like most people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. But there's a real problem with data sharing. Serious. So we were just asked to come in and kind of negotiate some data sharing efforts between some scientists in Europe and some scientists in North America around a couple specific diseases as part of a coalition of a group. And if people can't access data, they can't. I mean, you can have a clinical trial, but if you can't evaluate what happened in it, then it doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
Right.
It's got to get out there in the world. And so we really get down into the weeds. And I always say I'll survey scientists ahead of these events that we have and say, okay, besides money, I don't want you to tell me I just need money.
Yep.
The things you need may cost money, but I need to know the things you need.
Right.
Because we may be able to find it somewhere else for you. And there may be a way to bring some parties together.
Right.
And I think the way we make it faster is we get these groups to work together.
Yeah.
And it takes an enormous amount of money. It does. It just takes a clinical trial. Do you know what a clinical trial costs? On average, any guesses?
A lot of money.
$20 million. So, I mean, you and I can raise money all year long in Indiana, and we can continue to raise the roof on that. And we can, but at some point, it takes big money. And so we have to really focus on what we can do to get funding from other spaces as well. So we've done a lot of work in advocacy in the state here. We passed a law this year in Indiana to create a fund. House Bill 1453 was signed by Governor Braun this year, and it was the Pediatric Cancer Coalition here in Indiana that I'm a part of. Helped lead those efforts, and we had some great champions inside the legislation in that process, and it has no money in it. They didn't give us any money. They opened up a bank account, so now we got to keep working.
Got it.
You guys are hosting a forum, is that correct?
We
If
are.
I said that correctly?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually,
As a collaborator, this is like right up that alley. But it was interesting that you made the comment, like, it sounds great, but the challenge is getting people to come together because they've done all their work and they want to protect that data, and they've done all their work, which I get, but like, we can't make the best use of that data unless we collaborate. So
right, or there's some kind of regulatory thing or something, but we got to break that down too.
Yeah.
So I had the great fortune 2 years ago. I traveled to Oregon to do a nano course on childhood cancer therapy development at an institution, a nonprofit out there. And when I was there, I met a gentleman named Dr. Louis Doncato from Indiana, and he was getting ready to retire from Eli Lilly early to take on a new role developing pediatric rare therapies at an institution called the Indiana Biosciences Research Institute here in Indiana that was funded by state dollars. I mean, this was like a really big deal back in 2012 when the then Governor Pence did this work. And so I met Lou out there, and we were like, oh my gosh, we traveled all the way to Oregon to find each other. And we both he has so much energy, and he's so brilliant, and he's so driven to bring new therapies to kids. Well, it turns out he was really involved in a bunch of national and international efforts to really bring together the pediatric cancer community. And I started meeting all kinds of really neat people through him, and started to realize something that I've always known, which is, like, let's set the goal big.
Right.
Let's make it big. Why not? Nobody's able to try to expedite the development of these therapies for kids. It's a mess. So we're like, let's try to do something. And it turns out that Indiana's largest export is pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm in Columbus, where Cummins is the headquarters.
Yep.
Sure, yeah.
And so we oftentimes think about automotive industry. And anyway, so Lou and I said, let's try to bring everybody together. And so in 2024, we had our first 2 events. We had one for scientists and oncologists, and we had one for advocates in Indiana. And it was like, let's see if we can get these groups together kind of on their own. And we did it at the IBRI facility. And then after it was over, they created some goals for scientists. And all those scientists and oncologists from Purdue, IU, IBRI are still talking.
Nice.
They're still working together. Awesome things are happening between the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research and IU and IBRI. And then we said, let's see if we can't try to create a workflow or a thing or something that makes therapy development in Indiana like really easy to do. And so this year we're getting ready to have kind of a summit, and we'll have scientists from IU, the same kind of group, but we're expanding it, and we're going to bring them all together. And it's not just a talk. It's a work. What assets do we have in Indiana to make this possible? Nice. What do we still need to make happen? What do we not have? What are the barriers to really turning up this engine in Indiana? I've traveled all over the world, and it is absolutely ironic. I did not think this is the place that we would start this work.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden...
It's mighty convenient.
Yeah, it's been really nice. We also have a house in North Carolina, and, there's some cool research happening there, too.
True.
But we're really starting this effort here because we have this cool public-private partnership in IBRI, Lou's leadership. Karen Pollack is also on the steering committee with me, and then the Purdue people. And then in the afternoon, after the scientists have been like hashing it out all morning, talking about how do we repurpose drugs, how do we expand clinical trials for kids, how do we maybe do what's called de novo drug development, which is like make new drugs. How do we do all these things? And then in the afternoon, we're bringing in advocacy, legislators, all the other stakeholders, to learn about the highlight reel and find out how everybody else can help, and also kind of share the multi-stakeholder concerns. And it's been really great because Heroes Foundation has been supportive of this, and we've been able to come together and get a little bit of financial support to make it happen. And then Tyler Trent Foundation as well has jumped in. And then the Emmy Joy Brooks Fund out of IU School, the IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center is also supporting this. So. Yeah.
That's
cool.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that, putting it together. We're excited to hear how it goes, and look forward to continuing that momentum, and happy to be a part of it in a small way.
It's exciting.
Yeah. Exactly. Also, thank you for sharing your story.
Yes, thank you.
We are, as a collective, the Heroes Foundation, certainly sorry for your loss, but very proud of you and your family for turning that emotion to action and getting a lot accomplished, and not just quitting there. I mean, I could see that you have a pretty big vision, which is something I can jam with for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank all of you guys for joining us on this episode of the Summits Podcast. We hope you all enjoyed listening to Robyn's story and learning more about Elevate and what they're doing. If you want to get more involved, take a look at the links below and check them out. Until next time, guys, don't forget, beat cancer.